current dollar ride service day. So this will fit nicely. So we're going to add this on as an on-demand service. So folks will have to call in and reserve their trip at least a day in advance. But then our dollar ride, without hardly any additional cost, our dollar ride trip for the day, we'll just pick this up at the start and finish of the day. And if there's no request, obviously we won't go out there. So folks will need to reserve in advance. Even if they're just coming in, they'll need to let us know that they need a ride in the evening. So this is going to be a very cost-effective way to serve what's kind of a difficult spot for us, because it's just a little too far to deviate our fixed routes, and the fixed routes don't even necessarily run right when the need is for this service. So in the very early morning and in the early evening. So we have this model. We're working on a flyer for a point of sale and to place at the airport and our website. And we just wanted to let the board know and see if there's any comment or suggestions on this model.
So I think I'd mentioned before about possibly getting it actually on the plane. So like when you're reading the flyers, you know that it's there, would be one possible comment. And then the other question I have is, to make the appointment, is it actually a phone call, or is it a text or an app, or what? How do you call for a ride?
Right now it's a phone call, but I'm glad you asked that question. That leads into something we're working on in the fairly near future. I don't want to put a date on it, but we got a grant that's Caltrans is eventually going to execute with us to purchase a module to our current dollar ride scheduling software system. And this module will allow folks to request trips online instead of with the voice call, which will be cool. In addition to that, it does a number of other features. I think we have some discussion of it on a later item today. But yeah, initially it'll be a phone call, but eventually we'll add we should be able to add the online trip request to the toolkit.
Is there an option, which is probably too far advanced maybe, but when you do it online and you ask for a ride, can you track your vehicle when it's showing up, almost like an Uber?
Yeah, sort of. Let me check on that within our CTS. Our fixed route already has that feature, but yeah, that's a good question. Let me see what CTS, which is our dollar ride software, let me see what it's capable of. But our fixed route, you can go onto our website and click your route, or just go to the main page and you can watch all the routes running around.
I just had one question. I didn't see any mention of fee schedule. I know it's still, early in the planning stages and everything, but it'd be similar to like what the Super Shuttle company had down in the larger cities, right? More of like a shuttle cost more than a bus ride. Because the cities have Uber and similar apps now, it kind of put Super Shuttle out of business, but that'd be perfect. That'd be a perfect service to provide here in town for the airport, is like a shuttle.
Yeah, let me try to recap where we were at with that. So the initial thought for this service was we would use our current dollar ride service area, which is also an item we're going to talk about more extensively in a few minutes here. But our current dollar ride service area includes Crescent City proper, and then some of the areas surrounding it, up to about where the 199 and the 101 are at by Oak Valley Crossroads. So we may want to look at expanding that for later, but for simplicity's sake, we were going to use that as a service area for this as well. And then folks, assuming they're not ADA qualified, they would get the general public fare of $5 per dollar ride currently. But if the board wants to entertain some sort of different structure, we're open to that too. But that was the initial thought, to keep it simple and use existing GP dollar ride fares of $5 per trip.
Yeah, it's just a suggestion, because in the past when I've traveled frequently, it was really convenient, to go online, schedule my Super Shuttle at the certain time I arrive, And actually, I think I could pay for round trip to my hotel and back for around $35. And it was really convenient too to have, to be able to do it online with a confirmation number and everything. And then if your flight was late, you just catch the next shuttle. I guess that's something else we got to consider is late flights, right? Or flights that
I
don't
was
take
just gonna
off.
say, you bring up a good point there. I'm not sure quite how we're gonna handle that, because this is a dial-a-ride trip. Certainly they can stay and wait for late arriving flights, but we need to work with Ryan on how we're gonna know the flight is late and kind of work on that. Again, we're only gonna be going out there at 7:15 if we have a booked trip. So that'll, that reduces some of the instances, but this is definitely gonna come up. So, we need to work through that detail, yeah.
In the future, if it becomes more automated, where there's an app or online or something, would it still need to be the 24 hours notice? Or the day before notice?
Yeah, probably not.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there was a time limit on Super Shuttle back in the day, But I remember when I got to the airport for my first time and everyone was using Uber and there was no Super Shuttle. I felt really old.
I drove for Super Shuttle back in the day.
I'm standing there with my phone going, summon me a car, because I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah. No, you bring up some good points on this, and we just want to kind of get the word out and start promoting it more. It's been available if you look at our schedule brochure since like last fall, but I don't think we've had more than a handful of trips. So we just kind of asked them to book a day in advance. But we take paratransit dollar-ride reservations when capacity allows on a same-day basis now. So I'm sure we would try to meet the need if the call come in. But we're trying to get folks to at least call the day before.
Okay.
Now, has there been any discussion about if a flight coming in is diverted over to McKinleyville? And they have a ride set up? I mean, because I know if it's too windy or too foggy, they won't land here. No?
I didn't,
Okay, well, that's
you faded
something to
off
keep in
there,
mind.
did that, if a flight's diverted to McKinleyville and it's not gonna come in at all to CDC? No, we haven't crossed that bridge yet either. But yeah, you're right, a lot of things can go wrong with airport service, but yeah, we've still got to work through some of those details. I mean, we serve McKinleyville all the time. Every trip of the 20 goes in there. That's a scheduled stops because it's right next to the route. So that might work out well if they were diverted in there, but it would depend on when they landed. If it was after our last trip of the day, that wouldn't be so good. So, yeah, that's another issue to think about and talk to the airport about how they want to handle that.
Okay. Any public comment on this item? Come on up.
Thank you. I'm Ryan Cooley. I'm the airport director out of the airport. And first, I just want to say that I'm really excited to explore this opportunity and having public transit come out to the airport. In light of the fact that we actually do not have taxi service before 10 a.m. currently out to the airport, we've had a couple instances where people have come asking, how do I get out to the airport? I don't have a ride, and I need to get out here. And I have to say that the bus service has done a phenomenal job at a moment's notice of utilizing that dial-a-ride to help people get out to the airport. And I think if we actually promote this, both on the display boards at the airport upon board approval, the airport board approval, as well as, like you had suggested, maybe getting some flyers in the aircraft, advertising on the in-flight magazine, for example, or you just, I don't know what it would cost to advertise dial-a-ride out to the airport on the sides of the buses, the marketing, but just getting the word out to drum up business to bring people out. I don't know how many people would fly if they could just get out there, but we're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So not quite within walking distance, really, unless you live on Pebble Beach. But I wanted to speak really quick about some of the items that were brought up in terms of a delayed flight or a canceled flight. For example, I had spoken with Joe earlier, and one of the things that we had discussed is there would be a dispatcher who receives the reservation when they call in and say, hey, I'm flying out on such and such a date, I'm going to need a flight, I'm going to need a bus ride out to the airport, and then in turn also scheduling that return trip. I don't know how the dispatching works for the transit, but if there's someone on that day that realizes or knows that there is someone flying out that morning or flying in the evening, perhaps the dispatcher could use the resources that are out there, FlightAware, for example, to keep track of the flights if the flights are delayed, or perhaps a call-in number for someone in Oakland. You know, if a passenger realizes that the flight's delayed, oh my gosh, I got to let my dial-a-ride know and let them know that we're delayed. I'm not sure if there's a dispatcher who's manning that sort of space, but if there is, perhaps the dispatcher could be the one involved with the airport and the services out there to try to keep track of these flights, so that way people don't feel stranded or forgotten. But if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to ask. Joe's going to be presenting to the airport board here on May 4th and just kind of explaining the same thing to them as he explained to you guys, and I'm just really thrilled to partner with him in trying to create another avenue of getting citizens, community members of Crescent City and Delmar County within the transit service area to and from the airport. I think if we can combine these two travel networks, it'll just enhance our capabilities of meeting the needs of the public. Thank you.
Kind of with that, and I don't know if you would have the answer, or Joe, or maybe nobody, but technology's pretty amazing, right? You can do all kinds of things. So with this possibility of it coming onto an app, is there a way to link it with your flight? Like, hey, I booked it this way, and then it would, if it's delayed, it would automatically update for you?
So Contour is the one who runs their reservation services, and the app that runs the flight data for all aircraft that are flying in the area is completely separate. So I don't think there would be any way to integrate the two. That being said, if there is a way with the app to keep track of your dial-a-ride, and there is a way to, say, embed that app into, I'm just shooting ideas out here, the Fly Crescent City website under, transportation page for public transit, maybe we could have an active map that kind of like their website that shows where their bus is or the bus routes. I know that doesn't show the aircraft status, but that would show like the bus status. But in terms of trying to link up their app with the flight status, there'd probably have to be some sort of widget where you could, maybe have the FlightAware program built into the transit app where you could, it's a link that you select, so then you can put in your flight number and keep track of your flight that way. But I'm pretty sure if you're flying and your flight's delayed in Oakland, out of Oakland or out of here, you're probably already aware, and so maybe a
You can
tad.
make those adjustments. Yeah, I was just,
That's right,
it
yeah.
came to mind, like, oh, how can we streamline this? But yeah, it
Yeah.
might be too difficult, but.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Any other public comments?
All right.
None online? Okay. No more public comments. Joe, are you good on that?
Yep, no, great discussion. Thank you, and thank you for Ryan for attending tonight. Thank you.
Okay, now with that, we're moving on to item number 6. Discussion of fare increase options and minimum fare box recovery standards.
Yes, thank you. So this, RCTA hasn't done anything with its fares since a major lift in 2017 where we created a new distance-based fare structure that was more equitable for our regional routes, and at the same time we raised the fares a little bit on the local routes and for the folks that live in the county, which became a 2-zone trip for most of the pairs. That was implemented in the fall of 2017, and it has resulted, prior to that, The fares were like $1 in local Crescent City, and this moved them up to $1.25. Dollar ride was like $1.50, and it moved up to $1.75. And then prior to that, it was like $2 for anywhere in the county, and then went to $30 as soon as you crossed into Humboldt County for some reason. So the new zonal fare certainly was designed to be more fair to folks that are trying to get down to Humboldt to reach Amtrak or Greyhound or just services in general. So that reduced that fare to about $8 to $10, depending on where you were starting from. The idea was we were going to test and see how much latent demand was out there that might be suppressed by those higher fares. So we implemented the fare structure. One of the other important aspects of it is pre-2017, RCTA never had any half fare for seniors and disabled or a discounted fare for youth and students on the fixed route. Everybody paid the adult fare. So at the time we implemented this, we don't have to, being as we're rural. My interpretation of that is we don't have to have a half fare, but it's a good practice, and it mimics what our urban partners have to do with their 5307 funding. Comes with that constraint. So we basically created discounted fare structures at the same time that the general adult fare went up a little. So I think most people didn't feel the fare increase. In fact, many saw their fares go down if they're of a certain age or younger or older. So that was expected to increase ridership. Well, it didn't really. Ridership at that time, we're talking pre-pandemic, was going up a little, was creeping up a little bit each year, but not as much as we'd like, of course. And it continued to do so after the fare restructure in 17. So we had ridership growth in 17, 18, 18, and 19, but not significant. So that was disappointing that we tested the waters. We found out the artificial $30 fare to Humboldt was not really killing the ridership like we thought it might be. So that's where we've been since then. Ridership obviously was doing real well until March of 2020, then went in the toilet and hasn't really come out. It's been creeping up. We gained 7% last year, but it's been a very slow recovery from a very quick and devastating loss when the pandemic hit. Part of the reason we want to talk about a fare increase at some point here is because TDA is our main funding source that we get from within California. It's the lion's share of our funding, although we have a number of streams nowadays, but this is the biggest one. TDA comes with the requirement that receiving transit agencies generate a percentage of their overall operating costs out of rider fares and passes, locally generated fare revenue. And for rurals like our CTA, it's 10% or more. So back in the old days, pre-2017, we were up around 15, 17%, which was real good for a rural service. That went down a little bit when we restructured the fare, but the main impact on that happened when the COVID-19 pandemic hit and ridership vanished. So we lost 60% of our ridership almost overnight, and we've maybe recovered 10%, 15% of that since. So it's been a big drop in the number of people riding, so of course the number of people paying has went down as well. Adding to that, as far as the percentages, our operating costs have been going up quite a bit in order to survive the pandemic and to be more of an attractive place to work and address some of our historic problems with recruiting and retaining employees. So that our operating cost now is higher and our fares generated is lower, which is got us down to about 5% on the fare box recovery for last fiscal year. There's no sanctions against us yet. As soon as the pandemic hit, Sacramento, the legislature passed a year-to-year exemption voiding the fare box recovery ratio requirement for year to year, and that's still in place now, but I don't know that they've acted on anything for 23, 24 yet, so We anticipate that they'll probably continue to try to help transit. They realize that everybody's in a really bad spot. Most transit agencies have lost, magnitude of half of their ridership. So fare box recovery is a huge issue statewide. This is not just an RCTA deal. That said, we'll keep a close eye on it. I will keep you updated as our elected officials do or don't decide to either extend the exemption. They're actually looking at a number of reforms to TDA, and this one probably being one of the bigger ones. But they're talking about forming a task force in the Assembly and Senate to do that. But at this point, there's no new news. So as of right now, the exemption, I believe, expires next fiscal year. So we will keep on top of that. But yeah, it's all the more reason to look at our fares. We've added a lot of technology to our system. We've restored most of our lost service from the pandemic. So it seems like, and we're due, it's been 6 years. It seems like we should be considering a fare increase. So that's why I brought this item for you just to discussion and talk about a timeline and whether the board has interest in pursuing this. So here's a potential modest service increase. If you can see my screen, this would bring the Crescent City local fare. And this box right here, Crescent City to Crescent City, that's the majority of our riders. Most of our, we provide a lot of service and we spend a lot of revenue hours connecting into Eureka and, well, eventually Eureka here shortly, but Arcata for many years, and up to Smith River. But most of our riders and boarding activity is in Crescent City. So this group that represents the most riders would see a fare increase in this proposal of a quarter, up to $1.50. This would increase the two-zone fare, which is kind of our second most common group. So like Smith River to Crescent City to Klamath, Gasky to Crescent City. That would go to $2.50 from $2. And then on up, where right now this would get us to our new pair, which would be, our new biggest pair would be Smith River to Eureka. Once we get that service started in the summer, it's not running today, just want to be clear. Currently running today, Arcata is as far as we go. But that would get that up to $13 one way in this proposal and $11 from Crescent City. So it would be raising, the long distance fares would go up about $3 for the adult riders. Those shorter fares, like a quarter to 50 cents. The one other thing to talk about is, do we want to keep on these regional longer fares, do we want to retain the discount for seniors and the disabled, because they basically pay half of what's on the adult fare table. So that's something we can discuss as we're going through the process and the public outreach to implement this. The dial-a-ride fare would be proposed to go up to like $2 or maybe $2.25. Right now it's $1.75, so a small bump on that as well. And whatever we decide to do on the dial-a-ride, it will be important that we reach out early and often to our social service agency partners, because as it turns out, they buy most of the tickets for our dial-a-ride riders. The super majority, a few of them buy their own tickets, but it'll be the social service agency budgets that would be impacted if we increase the fares. So we'll want to work and collaborate with those entities that buy our tickets from us. And the general public dial-a-ride fare that we touched on briefly during the discussion about the airport, it's been $5 for many years. It doesn't get used much, but we expect that to increase with the airport service coming up. So that could be bumped up a little too. So that could maybe be $6, for example. Our monthly passes are currently $30 for the local pass, and then $55 for the two-zone pass for the county. And we discontinued, we did briefly for a while have a regional pass, but it just wasn't selling at all, so we basically got rid of that a while back. So this would be like a $5 per month bump on these passes that we're selling today. But yeah, so that's basically the idea. And then as far as the timeline goes, if you're interested in doing it at all, and I think I've kind of made the case that we might want to look at that. We don't have a lot of time to get it in, to have the fare increase coincide with the June service brochure. This is almost more for Mike's benefit than everyone else, but we basically try to do 2 service changes a year now at Redwood Coast Transit, which is June and like September. So at the start and end of the school year, which is the summer's our peak season. So it might be too aggressive to get to the June one, but certainly it seems like September, when we'll have a new brochure coming out, that would be a possible time to do it. Or if we need a little more time for outreach, it could be, we could do a new brochure in January that we could get to. So that would allow for more time to work on our options and get the public outreach going. But that's basically the presentation. I wanted to open it up for questions and comments and discussion so we can gauge if the board's interested in pursuing this year.
Yeah, Joe, I was wondering, don't we have that promotion coming up fairly quickly where it's the new tap technology? They're going in the buses and rides are going to be $1 for a while, so September would seem to be a good projection for after the promotion's over with and everything, and we certainly want to be in compliance with any grants we have and funding. So I don't think we really have a choice about increasing fares eventually. I think it would be counterproductive if we were doing it during our dollar rides when we introduce the new. Am I right? That's the card tapping, right? We're encouraging everyone to use the new technology, and does that go through June then?
So that, yeah, Ray, thank you for bringing that up. That project is behind schedule, but yes, we agreed to do a 6-month promo period where the tags are $1. That's on fixed route, not dollar ride, but you were close. Dollar ride, I believe the tags are the same prices today, but let me check on that. It might include $1, yeah. But the project's just gotten started, so that 6-month period's actually gonna, we just went to a soft launch. We've been accepting credit cards. I was gonna tell you guys about that a little bit later, but we've been accepting cards for about a month now. I mean, it's very slow. We haven't got a lot of point of sale marketing out there yet, but we've had a few tags. And actually, some of the social service partners are buying their passes with their credit card. They actually are really tickled about that, so that's working good. But we haven't had a lot of people taking us up on it yet. But 6 months of that will take us beyond the summer, so that's something to think about. If we really don't want to do the regular across the board fare adjustment until after that promo's over, then we might want to maybe look at the fall or even January. Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Rachel, are you there? I'm having trouble hearing the board members through the Zoom. Is that something that, yeah, it seems like Michael's kind of nodding his head too. Is that something can you turn up their volume for us or something?
She's working on it.
I'm working on it. That better?
You're definitely loud.
Oh, there we go, okay. All right, we got the mixer board down and we're ready for the main group to come on, all right. Thank you, Rachel. Any other discussion on this item? What's,
So the
good
fare,
point about the credit card readers, yeah.
the fare increase, 50 cents, 75 cents, doesn't sound like a lot of an increase. What type of actual impact does that have on the ridership, and will that deter riding even more?
It's a risk. I mean, there's a lot of people that are a lot smarter and have been paid a lot more to research this topic than me. But there's an equation that used to say, like in a perfect experimental transit world, if you raise it this much, ridership will respond by dropping X amount. But in real life, my experience with fare increases has been all over the board. But most of the ones that I've been involved with, if you do them at a time when you're offering new services and products and the service is good, usually the fare increases doesn't lead to hardly any ridership loss. The stories I've heard, and when you hear about ridership loss due to fare increases, it's often when they're implemented without anything new or exciting for the riders to, justify paying the extra quarter or whatever it is. So my experience with fare increases, if they're put in at the right time when you're doing exciting new services, often there's no loss at all.
Okay.
But
And so
you never know. Mhm.
it sounds like, you guys are recommending that we look into it, and it's probably long overdue, and I think it's probably a good idea, and like Director Altman had stated, if we implement it after this new, promotion, it probably is, probably time to happen.
Good. That's some good feedback. Anyone else?
No, I concur with that.
Yeah, we definitely have time for more discussion, and I guess these meetings are the only way to inform the public of possible fee schedule increases, so that gives us plenty of time before they're implemented to make sure everyone knows about it, might get some public comment on it. Now, I could be wrong, so maybe the next discussion will change everything, but if the promotion doesn't really affect the fee changes, because it sounds like they're different routes, so me not memorizing the routes, the promotion is only on certain routes, correct?
No, not exactly. The promotion will be for people that pay with contactless credit cards. So they're gonna get the promo fare. The cash payers and the bus passes won't change their price. So the cash fares will stay the same as they are today. So you get a chance to save money if you pay with the contactless fare card. If you pay the regular way with cash, or you buy your pass, or someone buys you a pass, it won't affect it won't affect you at all.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, so do we have, I guess you're kind of looking for a consensus to move forward, is that what we're after, of looking forward, or looking into this?
Yeah, if there's consensus that we should look into this more, we can come back, maybe do a little peer review chart where we update the fares of all our peers around us and in the world that we operate in, so that you guys can see where we stand vis-a-vis other transit agencies' fare. And, yeah, we can come back with like an outreach plan. It sounds like it's April 24th now, so for us to get to a September, or maybe October 1st. I was thinking of running the summer service through the end of September because the weather's so good in September. So maybe October 1st would be a brochure. We might be able to reach that one. The promo period for the credit card promotion would be about over by then.
Okay, yeah, I think we have
sounds good.
consensus. Yeah, let's move on to the next step.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Any public comment on that? Nope. Moving on. Item number, should have lost it. Item number 7, discussion of Dial-A-Ride service area expansion, senior fare, and late cancel and no-show policies.
Thank you, Chair Borges. This is another meaty topic we could have had at the workshop. It's like our workshop could have been 4 hours long if you think about it. We let you guys out at 2, and look what happened. Now we're here a month later going through more deep stuff. Anyway, this topic is, it's been brought to my attention in a couple, 2 or 3 things are pushing this agenda item. Again, this is informational. We just want to check your pulse and see what the board's interest is in pursuing it. We've gotten requests over the years to address the initial Dial-A-Ride service area that I kind of poorly described to you earlier. It's a little better here in the bulleted list in the staff report. But we basically serve Crescent City and sort of the areas you think are Crescent City but are actually county, but are like attached to the city. So that's our current service area. But quite often, folks call up and they're just outside that a little bit, or maybe they're up in maybe they're up in like Fort Dick, or, you know, they're not too far away, they're still in like an area you would think maybe would serve them, but they don't, because that wasn't the adopted service area from back when the agency started. From what I can tell, we've been using the same service area since 2004. So the idea might be to maybe expand. I mean, a few years ago when this first come up, we were struggling with controlling our dollar ride costs. We did a number of reforms and it tightened up how we're delivering service. And then the pandemic had a lot of things come together. But so the dollar ride demand is no longer out of control or impacting us as an agency. So this is kind of a good quiet time that we might want to consider looking at that dollar ride service area. I've never found a map, certainly not a digitized map in the modern world, but that's something we can do, and I think I've got the starts of one. So if we get serious about this, we'll come back, we'll show you the current service area and a couple proposed areas we could add. I think I mentioned, or I did mention a moment ago, we could add on maybe the Fort Dick area, up Lake Earl Road, further north, maybe as far as the Smith River itself. There's quite a few areas. We get some ridership on our Route 20 up there. Another step maybe would be east of the 101, between Smith River and the 199. There's quite a few homes out there. I think the one we get the most requests for is further north up Lake Earl. So that's a couple areas you could, maybe just think about, should we consider adding them to our dollar ride service area. Right now, if you live north of that service area, whether you're ADA accessible or not, you need to you can ask for a diversion of the Route 20, or you can get up to a regular bus stop, but there's no door-to-door service once you get outside the service area. So that's one issue. One other issue that's going on is we have operations brought to my attention that we have a pretty high percentage of folks that cancel late or no-show us at the door. This is an issue that all paratransit providers deal with, or don't deal with, but everybody experiences it. The FTA has passed down some circulars and some best practices that allow transit agencies to address this kind of behavior, because it costs the agency a lot of money. When someone, let's say a late cancel is defined as less than 2 hours notice. So if someone late cancels, or even worse, no-shows at the door, oh, I don't want that trip anymore, I forgot to cancel. That driver's basically been paid, taken out of service, and they can't deliver a trip to somebody else. So it's kind of a nefarious practice that a lot of folks do. Oftentimes it's innocent, they forget that they have a trip booked on that certain day, but still the result to the agency is significant negative impact. For example, at an earlier stop in my career, one that Michael knows well, we come up with a no-show and late cancellation policy that was based upon, a lot of it's kind of feel and art, but it was based upon a percentage of successful trips taken. So if the more the rider rode the dollar ride service in this case, the more they get a little bit of grace period. So for the occasional late cancel or no-show, because we know it happens. I was late. I almost was late for this meeting thanks to traffic. Stuff happened. But so that was how we did that. And then if they did cross that line and their percentage of, and I'll have to call Audrey and see what they're doing now. But if they exceeded the percentage that was allowable, then they would get a warning, like a door hanger or something, and say, hey, this is a problem. If you keep doing this, you can lose your riding privileges, kind of thing, or we can charge you. Another thing is we can charge for the fare that they would have paid for the trip they would have taken if they hadn't late canceled or no-showed it. So there's a couple things you can do to try to, address the behavior. And that's basically all I've got to say about that. Fernando can probably give you some numbers if he's in the audience, but he brought it to my attention how high a percentage of late cancels we've had lately. But before that, let me finish my spiel here. So the one thing that we have that's coming already, and I touched on it earlier in the other item, we've got a grant. It's just a matter of getting it executed through Caltrans, which is is not as simple as it would seem. But anyway, soon we will have the ability to purchase the CTS add-on module, which is our dial-a-ride scheduling software, and this will provide robocalls to the customer the night before, which allows them an easy and graceful way to cancel the night before, so they avoid the late cancel that way. Oh, and it also, during the service day, when the bus is getting close to picking them up, it also sends out a call, I think it can be set up for text as well, to their phone, letting them know the bus is coming to get ready. So that also helps with speeding up things and helping with on-time performance and increasing the productivity of the service. And then the third function of it is that we touched on earlier is it does allow the riders to book trip requests online that then get integrated into the schedule so they don't have to call and talk to someone. And, they can do it late at night and off hours too, when we don't have anyone there to answer the phone. So that's this item. I wanted to kind of open it up for discussion and see if there's interest in looking at that dial-a-ride service area and maybe working on a late cancel and no-show policy that we could maybe enforce to address some of these issues.
How far out is this module? I guess you don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. We were granted this grant over a year ago. We haven't seen the standard agreement yet. And that's becoming more and more common with these guys. So I don't want to put a date on it. Hopefully this year, hopefully in 2023, hopefully.
Okay. And before I open up to discussion, Fernando, would you mind telling us how many and how often and give us some numbers?
Of the cancellation, and it really depends big on the weather. So especially at the beginning of the month, if it's supposed to be sunny but then it changes to rainy, we will have 10 and it'll go down to 3 rides a day for that day, because a lot of the elders or ADA don't want to get out and go out in the rain, so they'll cancel the ride the same day. They don't call the night before. And some of them, I'd say about 15% cancel at the door, so the driver will get to the door and, oh, I forgot to cancel. So the driver gets back in and heads to the next ride.
And currently, the current practice is we just say, oh, have a nice day, and
Yep.
we walk away.
Yep, the driver tabs it on the tablet, no show, canceled that door, and then they move on.
And while you're up here, and maybe others have questions as well, the ridership possibility going into like the Fort Dick area, how much of a demand have you heard?
We get about 4 phone calls a month asking if we go out that way. If you want to consider Smith River, it'll be 6. So right now, you guys know the crossroad. So we get about 2 a month on Wander Stump. We don't go past, so it's cut off right there at the crossroad. And then the highest we've gone up 199 is the golf course. We've gone to the mobile home park up there, and that's the furthest we'll go there. So, but it could increase the ridership 10 to 20%.
Would it be a big impact on staffing to go that extra? I mean, even if you added 10 more rides a month, would that?
No, because right now, the driver's leaving because they have a 2 to 3 hour break because of all the cancellations. And we tell everybody, you could call in that same day, it'll be a same day charge, and we'll pick you up, and we don't have any options for that. Most of them just take the fixed route bus.
And on some of those no pays or cancellations or whatever, no shows or cancellations, if you were to still charge them the full rate, would they care, I guess?
Yeah, as
Would
I
that
spoke to
deter them?
Joe about this, they wouldn't, because about 90% of our ridership that does do paratransit services get their passes for free. Only 10% are actually buying their passes, so they wouldn't care. They just hand you the pass, punch it.
So, and pass it, the driver, still technically gets paid for the trip even though he's not
Yeah.
making it? Okay. Interesting.
So do you have chronic abusers of that?
We do have our users.
Have you thought about possibly sending them letters?
Joe has given us a contentional letter, and they'll get like a week suspension. We started at 3 days, and then they'll get a week. So, but that's the most. It just goes from back and forth, 3 days, 1 week, 3 days, 1 week.
Well, it probably hasn't made that much of a difference, Okay.
Yeah, I definitely think that they should have to forfeit their pass if they can't at least give, what are you guys thinking, 24 hours? notice?
2 hours is decent, you know.
So
Like Joe said, a lot of the time,
figure out-
we give them a 2-hour break, and we don't give them any penalization, because we'll give them 3 strikes before they'll actually get a letter. And then they have that 3 chances, but most of them, they'll cancel right at the door. We tell them, hey, cancel 2 hours before, that's a decent amount of time.
Yeah, because even if you're getting your pass for free, you probably only have so many passes. So if you have to forfeit a pass,
Yeah, that is correct.
and there you go. And that's the best incentive ever to communicate is when you have to forfeit.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And so what else, being in the field and knowing the ridership, what other policy type things could we do to prevent it?
The charging would be the best one. Really, there's not much you can do with the ADA involved, other than, like I explained to Joe, other locations do charge for the cancellations if they cancel within a certain amount of time.
So, would it be possible that if they no-show at the door or cancel at the door, that you charge them a same day on their following ride? Is there a way to track that? So that
There
you
is a
can
way to
charge them
track
the
it,
same
yeah.
day on their next ride?
Yeah, but we might get into ADA regulations for that, because technically we can't charge them the same day fare. It would have to be basically the 2 ADA fares that they would have paid. So you would stamp them once
Okay.
for the other trip that they no-showed, and then again for the next $7.75.
Okay.
For the, Chair Borges, we've got Michael Conneran, our attorney, he's got his hand up.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I would recommend us coming up with a policy on this. This is something that's suggested by FTA in their ADA compliance circular. We've got examples we've used for other agencies, and I think there's a model in the FTA document. And I think you do want to be careful that you follow those rules. I'd suggest that. I don't think it'd be a lot of work to provide you with an example. We probably have one from Joe's former agency we could look at for that. But it is something, there's like, you have to have appeals processes and stuff that people may not use. But it is something that is somewhat looked at, may come up in your triennial review from FTA. There's also some suggestions, like you've been discussing, of ways to encourage people to let you know if they're going to cancel. And it sounds like this software solution is a good one, because I think that, that's kind of a real-time process that they can use. So I would suggest that. Thank you.
And so I think it sounds like we have consensus across to move forward with coming up with some sort of policy and procedures for the late cancel and no-shows.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Joe, are you good with that?
Yes, that sounds great, yes.
And then also on that same talk about the service area expansion. Are we needing some consensus to move forward with that?
Would it be possible, Joe, at our next meeting to get an area map of what we currently do, and then a proposal of the extension of those areas? And also,
I think so.
would it be
We-
possible to charge an extra fee for going to those locations to help recover the cost of fuel?
That's a good question. I'll have to research that, that last part. But going back to, can we get the maps together? Yes. It may be too aggressive to do it at the next meeting, but yeah, certainly by 2 meetings from now, we should be able to come up with that. Mapping's a bit of one of our Achilles heels. But yeah, I think we've got something to start with, and I just got to make sure it's accurate. So yeah, within a couple meetings, I think we can bring this back with the proposed, some alternatives for policy, like we talked about for the no-shows and late cancels, and then some maps showing the current service area and proposed alternatives to expand it.
Okay. Did we touch on everything from item 7?
Yes, I believe we did.
Oh, what about the senior fair?
So the senior fair, is that in here? Yeah, well, let's talk about it, even if it's not.
It's on item
It's
7,
there.
yeah.
So the senior fair ideas come out of the planning study on the medical shuttle. And that would be to basically have, because we have the $5 general public dollar ride, and then we have the ADA eligible fare, which is $1.75. This would slot in between those for seniors that are not ADA eligible above a certain age threshold, but it would give them a break on the GP dollar ride fare. And I think that's within our power, that we can do that if we're interested in doing that. But yeah, so the initial, I think it came out of one of our outreach meetings with folks, and the idea of like a $3 fare or something like that came up in the discussions, and I mentioned that we would vet that with you guys and see if it's something you're interested in pursuing.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't know, I'd like to see the study first myself before we mess with the senior fairs.
How big of a break would it be?
Well, if we implemented it at $3, it would be a $2 break, because the current general public fare for anybody that's not ADA eligible, not in the database, is $5. So it'd be a $2 break. If we raise that GP dollar ride fare to $6 as part of the fare increase, it could be a $3 break. So yeah, whatever we can set it wherever the board's comfortable. Or we can
So we're
not do
not
it at
talking
all.
about an increase to senior fares, we're talking about a discount?
Yeah, this is for general public dollar ride. So again, not many, I think I'm probably going too fast through this, but the general public dollar ride is something we don't have to do, but we've always done it because there's needs in the community. And so it's $5 per person, and any of us non-ADA eligible can use it at any time. We just got to call and reserve the trip in advance, preferably, although if same day, you could do it if there was space available. But let's just say, yeah, we reserve our trip in advance. They're like, oh, I don't see you in the database. Yeah, no, I'm not. So you're $5. So we would pay $5 instead of $1.75, which the ADA eligible folks pay. So this would really be getting at seniors that are not ADA eligible. So for folks of a certain age or above, that are still able to use fixed route and don't qualify under ADA law.
And what
Prepared.
percentage is that of riders?
Well, it's a good question. Fernando, do you want to take a guess at that?
He's shaking no.
Yeah, I don't think we really know.
No? Okay.
Don't seniors fall under the same category as ADA?
No, not in dollar ride, no.
Okay.
We're not talking about fixed route here. This is for the dollar
Right,
ride.
for paraservices. Because currently our seniors do get the same rate as the ADA.
Can you explain that again?
So any senior that rides paraservices do get the ADA fare currently.
That's news to me. How long's that been going on?
Since
the
forever,
beginning.
since I was working there.
So who's paying the general public rate then?
The general public are, and same days.
Same days? Okay, so when Fernando says same days, that's folks that don't call in advance, but they call and we try to squeeze them in when we can. Okay, so they're paying $5. What's the age cutoff to be a senior then for that rate?
I believe we've been doing 62.
62, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Well, that adds a twist to this, so we need to regroup. That shows you that I really don't know what's going on around here. So 62 and over are getting the no, they're getting the ADA rate of $1.75 even if they're not in the database?
That is correct. To clarify, all of our seniors are in the database. The only folks we do not put in the database is the general public. They just go in as general public.
So they don't have to give their names or anything?
That's correct.
Yeah. So then the seniors, you get their information, but they don't get an application to apply for they're not being given applications or?
Correct.
Okay, so it sounds like we got some sorting out to do about what's going on, so I suggest we table that part of this discussion until we figure out what we're doing. But yeah, so it might actually be a bit of a fair increase if let's say 62 was the magic age, and we've been giving them 175 trips, even if they're, still playing 36 holes a day. And yeah, so it sounds like there's a little bit of a disconnect in our policy and our fare structure there. So yeah, if we come up with a senior fare that was higher than that, it wouldn't be a discount after all.
Gotcha. Okay, so out of item 7, we're going to leave that for a little more information and discuss it further at a later time.
Yep.
Okay. Then we are moving on. Item number 8, discussion of the fiscal year 2023-24 preliminary RCTA draft budget.
Okay. There's a lot of information. We always bring the budget to the group at least twice. Second time we go for adoption. This year, we might even have a chance to do it 3 times if we need to. But this is our preliminary look at the 23-24 fiscal year budget. Revenues are up in general. Our TDA money actually went down a little after 2 or 3 sharp increase years. And that was because last year, not only did the quarter-cent sales tax generate more money than ever before, but there was a carryover sum from a previous year that had exceeded. The way TDA works is you file the claims based on a projection that the economists and the treasurers create, and then reality comes the 12 months after that, and some years it comes in higher or lower than projected. So a carryover balance comes when previous years were better economically than they were projected to be. And that's why last year's our TDA money was over 900K. We had a real nice year in general, and then we had a carryover balance that was programmed to RCTA by the Transportation Commission. So it's down a little, but not to be worried. It's just because we didn't have as big a carryover to work with this year. The STA fund, which is State Transit Assistance, this is the highest I've ever seen it for us, 400,000, 401. So that's really helpful. And that got a shot in the arm when SB1 passed about 3-4 years ago. Maybe it's 5 now, time flies. But yeah, that increased the formula for STA, and that's been beneficial to RCTA. It's good that our revenues have been increasing because our costs have been increasing the last few years as well, to mostly on fuel and labor costs, as well as all the transit toys that we've basically been implementing this fiscal year. So it's been a lot of work. But those also come with some operating costs. Our AVO CAD system is a software as a service that we pay, about 25 grand a year for. The support and stuff for the credit card readers is going to have a price, maybe not quite that high, but there's an ongoing operational cost for us. And each of the buses now has a Wi-Fi router that has a SIM card, so we pay about $40 per bus per month. So those costs start to add up that we didn't have in the old days. So those things have increased line items for communications, which is new stuff for us. Some of the assumptions in there is that we'll continue to run the Route 300, which is our school bell-oriented service for the full academic year, now that classes are back in person, which is good. It assumes 6-day-a-week service year-round, except the 3 routes that we don't run on Saturdays historically, which is the 1, 3, and 199. It maintains a stable advertising revenue amount, and then a 3% inflation rate on the transit management line that was in our contract. The ad revenue's been, we had a down year. We didn't receive any this fiscal year yet, but now I've got 2 buys in the mix, so we should see at least one of those this fiscal year and probably the other one next fiscal year. So that's been, and then we add that to our fare box take, so that really helps with our recovery ratio that we talked about earlier that we need help with. The fuel prices have been difficult, so we're under, we went over budget this year real bad. We got one of the items that fell off tonight's agenda, but we'll bring back to you next month, is a budget adjustment to move money around because fuel we didn't budget enough for. This includes some funding for, and we got some things to talk about here, but includes some funding for the engineering that we talked about earlier, that RFP. We're going to need to pay to get to like 30% design, so we have a site plan and a charging, what do you call it, an electrical capacity analysis, so we can go to Pacific Power and have them size up what bigger transformers and switch gears we need for our project so we can charge buses there. And yeah, and then it included this initial one had a little bit of money for some conceptual design on the cultural center hub. But I do have some news and some information to touch on. So maybe our next iteration of this budget, we might change that a little bit. And then here's your attachment that shows the budget. Couple things to note. This is the first budget in RCTA history that'll have that broke the $2 million mark in our operating budget, which is, that's increased a lot. It was in the like $1.25 million just a few years ago. On the capital side, this budget's a lot of this is speculative because if Caltrans we not only have Caltrans slowly approving grants, but then we have the bus industry unable to build buses. So we have this perfect storm of a nightmare. So we put the best case scenario in here for how many buses we might be able to buy next year, but it could very well be less than that if the industry, can't manufacture them. So the capital expenses are about $1.5 million. The operating at just over 2, and then our total revenue is 3.7. So it shows, in addition to reserves, a modest one of 116,000, but that could change. That's very, that's a moving target because depending on these capital projects, if they come through slower, then actually we would probably contribute more to reserves. If they were to somehow lurch forward and spend all that or more, and we could amend the budget, we could even spend down more. So the capital projects are very lumpy. They're hard to predict how they're going to come out, especially in this current world we live in. But anyway, so any questions about the preliminary budget? Assumptions, you see here our operating contract. This is the first year that we broke out dial-a-ride. We've always had it lumped in the local fixed routes, so we couldn't really see what its costs were. So this year's budget, this is exciting for me. I don't know about anybody else, but this year's budget, we've broken out the dial-a-ride costs, including their percentage of the fixed monthly costs to keep our lights on and stuff and pay our dispatchers. So that's all broken out separately now. So you have the fixed route, the regional route, and then the dial-a-ride separated for the first time this year.
Okay. Just a quick question on operating expenses for maintenance buses and shelters, and then upgraded tech toys. Why is there a 0 there?
The maintenance bus good question. The maintenance buses and shelters line, First Transit's responsible for maintaining the shelters as part of their contract. So we're paying them out of these 3 lines down here, the O&M contract lines, 202, 42, and 43, and the TBD line. So that's why that's in there. It's an old line item that was in there before. What we used it for this year, so you see we'll spend 22, we budgeted 36 for. That was for the the credit card readers and the AVL software and stuff. So that's all, that needs to come out of a line. And we have, currently we're showing part of that in the miscellaneous department services line. And then part of it is in, mostly now it's in communications. That's why I jumped up to 46. So basically we moved the money out of 20170 and moved it up to 20120 mostly. Yeah.
And maybe this isn't the right time to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. With the maintenance of the shelters, who's doing that? And I guess I'm asking because I walked around town this weekend, and one stood out to me where the bench is completely paint coming off, it rusted. I mean, it looks pretty rough. Who's responsible for keeping that up?
Well, it's a group effort. First Transit is officially responsible for maintenance of the equipment that's in the field and that we buy. But at the same time, we kind of control where they're at and we buy the materials. So we're, but yeah, to make a long answer short, it's First Transit, Transdev now, that's responsible for maintaining what's out there in the field.
Okay.
But, like the rusting on I know what you're talking about. Those benches and shelters have been rusting for years. So that would be, beyond what we would expect First Transit to fix. We would need to we've talked about doing a project and have those stripped and repainted and that would be then on us. That would be an agency thing, not routine maintenance like we would expect with vandalism or whatever that First Transit deals with daily. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, Joe, this is Ray Altman. Hey, I wanted to ask these funds we're spending for the engineering and the final design for the EV charging equipment for the electric buses, are we on about the same projected timeline as finding out about our lease with the state?
Yeah, I think I understand what we're asking there. So we're required by CARB, which is California Air Resources Board, we're required to start purchasing a percentage of our new buses, which is funny because you can't hardly purchase anything right now, but assuming that all works out, we have to start purchasing a percentage of new buses that are ZEBs, zero emission buses, by 2026. And then that percentage goes up to, I think it's 25% initially, and that's based on the year. So with as small as we are, we might actually be able to, I've been talking with CARB staff, we might be able to avoid, buying some of the ZEBs if we want to, because we're so small, we buy 1 or 2 a year, and they round down. But anyway, that's deep in the weeds. So we need to do that, and by 2030, all the buses will have to be ZEBs that we purchase new. Or you can get a waiver, and that's possible that we may need a waiver at some point. But yeah, that's how the ICT regulations are set up. So 25% of new bus purchases starting in 2026, graduate, accelerating up to 100% by 2030. So yeah, but the good news is they give you credit. So if we buy a ZEB and put it into service before 26, we can count that for 26. So yeah, there's no penalty for getting an early jump on them.
Yeah, I'm not sure you understood my question. Of course, I know we have to move forward on the electric vehicle deadline, but I was just a little concerned about, putting in the infrastructure without having another 20-year lease with the state there at the Williams location. Okay. And that's what I was talking about on the timeline. Are we kind of matching? Do we have an idea from the state if they're going to renew our lease yet, or?
Okay, sorry about that. I didn't understand, right? My bad. The magic of Zoom. So we met and reached, we being, the executive director of the fairgrounds and myself, reached agreement on, executing the extension, and she sent it off to, the request off to Sacramento for those folks draft the lease, and then they'll present an extension for us to look at, and then we can approve it. So yes, it's looking good. I don't know how long that process is gonna take. The current lease is only good through about this time next year, so we have like 12 months left. So hopefully it'll come soon. That's been a while now. She said that was probably back in the winter that she sent that in, so we should hear something soon. But yeah, it looks like we're, you know, she wants us there, we want to be there, so it's looking good, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's excellent, because I know for a while there we were talking about trying to find a new place. And that's great if we get to stay there. Thank you.
Agreed completely, thank you. No, sorry about misunderstanding the question.
Questions from the board? No. Open it up to public comment. I see none. Anything else on that, Joe?
Nope, so we'll bring this back next month when we meet, and it'll probably be back with an option to adopt. And if we're comfortable, we can do that. Otherwise, we'll need to have a June meeting then to get it adopted before next fiscal year. But yeah, it'll need to get adopted in one of the next 2 meetings, yeah.
Okay, moving on. Item number 9, management report, First Transit Project Manager.
So our staffing levels are back up to normal. We have 10 drivers on board, and we're looking at getting at least 1 to 2 more part-timers for the summer trips that we have planned. And then we'll probably look at another full-timer if we do the Southern Oregon Medical Shuttle as well, going from here to Medford and back 2 days a week. Other than that, that's all I got.
Since you're here, can I ask you about the maintenance on the, like, what's the general maintenance that are done on?
So the general maintenance, we do have rattle can sprays that we could go out. Sometimes they'll match, sometimes they don't. So you'll see a different coloration. We just need to know which one that is.
And that,
Most of them have been replaced.
and it probably isn't as bad as I'm guessing. I just, you know, the better shape they're in, the better people take care of it, I guess, is kind of my mindset. And so I just didn't know what maybe more we could do, or maybe it's, you know, can look into it more and see
So I
which other ones.
guarantee it's one of the older ones, because all the newer ones are aluminum. They won't rust. They'll corrode before anything, but the paint will just fall off and it'll just be reapplied. So most of the older ones are made out of steel, which is rusting.
Yep.
Joe replaced about 50% of the ones locally within the last 3-4 years. And I believe he's looking at getting semi-seats versus the shelters due to vandalism.
Right.
Because when we switched all the glass out to plexi, we had people still in the plexi. So that didn't really help. So we looked into getting mesh wiring for the back of the shelters, which looks nice. That's what the big cities have. But now that all of the vandalism and stuff has gone up, a lot of counties are actually taking out the shelters and putting in just a pole and a seat. They either have 1 or 2 seats with them, and that's what Joe's working on getting done currently.
Gotcha.
So that one might be scheduled to get one of the new semi-seats, right?
Correct.
Yeah, because we've been working on that for a while. I forgot what the delay was on getting all those installed. It was,
Yeah, Joe has more on that.
yeah.
Yeah, the delay is the city and county want permit packages that I haven't had time to put together yet with maps and stuff. So I'm working on it.
Permit packages for the pole? That's what they want?
Yeah, for the semi-seats. Yeah.
Due to it going on easements of people's property, because
No, it's in public right away.
so currently, the sidewalk has to be open, so the semi-seats would have to go on the back side of the sidewalk, and I believe that's why they're requiring him to get permits, because it's adding to the sidewalk currently. Because we have to have a minimum of 32-inch clearance for ADA.
yeah, it's definitely one of the things they're looking for. They just want a permit package so they can review that and make sure we follow those rules that Fernando just explained, yeah.
Okay. Any other from the board on the manager's report? No, good. Any public comment? Okay, good work. Moving on, item number 10, RCTA General Manager's Report.
I've got a couple, even though it's been a long meeting, a couple exciting things to say before we run out of time here. I got a call this morning that was really exciting and a game changer for our little agency. We've been successful in our TIRSIP application with Humboldt Transit to get funding for design and construction of our downtown transit center. So that's pretty cool. I've been kind of giddy all day about that. So that, I don't have all the information in front of me, but it was a few million, and it's not only for the downtown transit center, it also has funding to purchase a nice batch of like, I think it's 4 to 6 electric buses and money for our charging that we just talked about designing. It also has some money to construct the charging improvements needed at our yard. So it's kind of a catch-all. Our 3 biggest unfunded projects that were like scary looming in our future. This grant addresses all 3 of those things. So I'm really excited about that. Haven't got anything in writing, but they called Humboldt called me. So it's a really exciting day for our CTA. Oh, and then I spent the whole day buying a couple used buses. I hope that's okay. I joke, but we found a couple of lightly used MV1s, like our main Dollaride paratransit vehicle. And we also have that old PTMISCA funds that we could use for something like this that need to be spent down or encumbered by the end of June because they're sunsetting that program. So this was a good mix. So I'd like the board's support to pick up a couple of these used vehicles. That way we'll have 3 of, I think 2 of them would be the same year and one's a year older, but with less miles. This is something our operation guys brought to me, and they'd love to have additional small vehicles for Dial-A-Ride. So with this, we'd be set for our Dial-A-Ride fleet for several years, because we could rotate these through, use one day, the next the other, and keep their mileage under control that way. So we'd like to spend about 25 grand a piece to get those in our fleet this spring.
Okay. And you want our support, or you already bought them?
They're not bought yet, so if you don't want me to do it, you got to tell me tonight.
Gotcha. Okay.
Otherwise, I can bring it as a formal approval item. I don't know if I even need to. It's within my purchasing level, but yeah, I can bring it as an item next month, but we can't, couldn't wait on them. So we need to know if the board supports picking these 2 up. You may recall the one we have now is super popular with our riders. It's easy to get in and out of for seniors. It has a nice, about an 8-foot ramp that extends, so wheelchair boardings work really well. Obviously one wheelchair at a time, but it's a small vehicle. But yeah, this has been an amazingly popular vehicle since we introduced it back in 2017. The problem has been they went out of business. They quit. They only made them for about 4 years. So they're very rare, but we found a couple that we can grab and have shipped out to us. So yeah, we'd like to go ahead and move on that and shore up the Dial-A-Ride fleet with 2 used vehicles.
Did we discuss this at, not the last meeting, but the meeting before? I thought we did like a
Does sound familiar.
preliminary approval of it or something, didn't we?
It has my full support, because we're lucky to find any
Yeah.
buses.
Yeah.
Either way,
That's
go
how I
ahead.
felt, yeah.
It's within his authority, so you don't need to take formal action, but it's just not
You
on the
have our
agenda.
support.
Sounds like he's got the ability to go forward.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we had the support to go forward. Tamara's got her hand up.
Hi, I just wanted to say congratulations on that, such an important partnership grant award. It's a big deal. And I have good news on a different grant. I won't get the formal news for a couple months or more, but filling in those gaps with these grants, the partnerships make us stronger. My my grant is a partnership with the Transportation Commission and the harbor in the South Beach area. And it looks like that project is going to, or that planning project is going to move forward. But you know, when we can join forces, have good collaboration with our neighbors, we have such stronger grant applications. So, you know, I'm grateful for Humboldt Transit for providing the leadership on this, but also for just pulling us in and everybody doing their share. So I want to make sure your board hears from me that really good work on, you know, everybody pulling together to move us a step ahead on that. And, you know, Joe, you're doing a good job. This is a good meeting.
Thanks, Tamara. It seems a little painful, but I'm glad that it's I'm glad that it seems okay to the outside. And thank you for the kind words. It's very exciting. And, you know, one silver lining of that whole pandemic thing is we started collaborating with our partners, especially HTA, weekly at first to try to survive the crazy time that none of us had ever been through. And then out of that, as we evolved kind of through that and looked like we all going to survive that, we started working on these exciting projects together. So yeah, this has been a really good example of how that can bear fruit.
Okay. Any other comments for Joe on his report? Nope. Any public comments on it other than Tamara? No. Then Joe, if you don't have anything else, so we're going to move on to announcements. I don't believe there are any.
Oh, I have one.
Nope, I take that back.
Get the buses ready for the Forest Moon Festival
Oh,
on June 2nd and 3rd. You're going to have to shuttle around a lot of Jedi Knights.
That's a very good point.
That's all I had, besides my 45-minute speech, if you guys have time.
Why not?
I kid.
Okay. Seeing no other announcements, Joe, do you have anything else for us before we adjourn?
Nope. Thanks for your patience tonight. We had a lot of ground to cover. I appreciate it.
Okay. Then I guess I will adjourn this meeting at 7:01.
Thanks, Joe, and that's awesome news about the grant.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Yep.